Hello, today we're going to talk about contextual studies in terms of its understanding, breaking down design in contextual understanding. And if you want to design anything with a context, first you have to start with a problem question. And in order to understand today's lesson, we're going to look at an example. This example, let's say we're going to use world hunger. Now, the image I'm going to show you is going to be a little bit disturbing, but bear with me. Now that's quite sad looking, isn't it? Because world hunger is a real problem. Now let's just say you are a designer hired by an NGO to actually create a campaign. And this campaign, the purpose of this campaign is to talk about the children. And as you can see, children are suffering because of hunger. Famines in different countries, and the struggle to have enough food to feed them. You notice they are not exactly happy because they are malnourished. So it's a huge problem, and it's a real problem, and it's a problem that you have to understand and study. Then it gives birth to the purpose. So the purpose behind it, like I said, is to actually communicate to the general audience around the world and tell them that the children need to be happy, they need to be fed, and they are basically very important. But in what context? Now, the purpose is this. If you see smiling faces, they're being fed, and basically this is what you want to see, isn't it? Is what people want to see. This is what they want to see the next generation doing, healthy and smiling, happy. Now, what's the context? What's the meaning behind this? Children. Okay, what's the purpose of children? You got to look beyond just seeing them happy. You got to look beyond the facade. You got to see what's behind that image. What's the meaning implied? So the meaning implied is what the purpose gives birth to, and you need some kind of metaphoric vehicle for that. Now, you notice that when children are happy and being fed, they can learn, and children are basically our future, right? When you educate them, they are the next generation of leaders. They are the hope for today's generation. So the context has to be represented by something, though. So since you all are visual designers, and to a large extent you need to use visuals, even if it's in 3D form, to actually try to communicate this understanding. So you need a metaphorical vehicle or a conceptual vehicle. So concepts come from meaning, from representations. Then finally you see something that's more effective to communicate to the rest of the world. So you use a metaphorical vehicle of analogies to actually talk about why they need to understand that hunger is not acceptable. Famines are not acceptable. So this will be an effective campaign if you use a very strong narrative. The narrative means a story behind that meaning. The meaning is basically the story. So you have to tell a story. You come up with various different kinds of ideas. Now you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kind of ideas here that talks about preventing hunger and sharing our strength and uniting against hunger, and talking about children as our future, and that picture of the child holding the globe He's got the world in his hands. It means that he's a lot more prepared to face the world when he is healthy. So you can see different kinds of styles of also putting the visuals together. And these are very effective metaphorical vehicles to communicate to the general audience, the wide audience. And some metaphorical images or vehicles or concepts actually have very strong, very powerful emotional meaning behind it. Freedom, using the fork, for example, here as something that is supposed to be used for eating, but rather it's preventing people from eating. So you see the hands going through the fork and all that. So that's that technique, that meaning behind that is very powerful, and the typography applied to it, it's very effective. So it does communicate very clearly. You don't have to think so much because the visual already tells you that you have done a lot of thinking behind it. There's a strong narrative behind the use of these objects. Right. So we used hunger just now as an example. Now what if we use designers? Now we talk about uh, the vision of Antonio Gaudi. Antonio Gaudi was a famous architect, one of the pioneers of the Bauhaus movement post-industrial revolution. And this is a very famous structure that is still undergoing construction, which will only be completed in the year 2020. You can find the La Sagrada Familia at Barcelona. I've been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful structure, and I tell you, it's such a religious experience. Going inside this structure, touching its pillars, and really appreciating the intricacies of its design. So organic, so close to nature. What was Gaudi thinking when he was designing some of these pillars at the park? This is a park, a very famous park called Park Gel, and lots of the structures there, they comprise of uneven rocks, and the pillars are constructed to look like organic forms, like as though it has grown from the ground. And it has a strong correlation to the natural surroundings, the plants that's around there. And it's such a well-maintained park, and the structure and the architecture behind it, it's so sound, it's so powerful and strong. It shows a very positive, very firm mindset when it comes to relating his designs to nature. Gaudi is such a creative person. He really appreciates art, and he tries to mimic nature and objects, organic materials, using tiles for colors. Such a beautiful thing to see. It's as though he has some sort of inspiration, some kind of religious inspiration behind all this. And the context of all his design is marrying aesthetics with function, and bringing back art into the modern lifestyle. And that's why you see lots of his buildings surpasses that of his time. Today we really do appreciate it because we talk about sustainable technology designs that they're so natural. I've been to the Gaudi Museum in Barcelona, and I've seen some of the tiles that has motifs of some of the plants that's just around his house. So the textures and patterns, they're really, really interesting. You can see the leaves, the organic motifs that creates the monograms, very cleverly designed. He's pretty much everything. He's a graphic designer, interior designer, he's an architect. He's pretty much everything. A lot of the works that he's done is just beautiful. and they look like vines. The pillars. You could almost see, you could almost imagine that some of these plants growing out from the ground and turning into these structures itself. And sometimes you see actual structures that become representations of organic material, so they become symbols. His entire work is a symbol, um, and it has become a strong identity for him. I mean, when you see this La Sagrada Familia and you see any of his structures in Barcelona, you know Gaudi's influence is very strong there. So it's become very much part and parcel of him. So when he designs something, the context, he's not just designing something at random. It's just he designs everything in context, in the context of connecting, interfacing with nature. Another example is other symbols and its representations. The context in which the Rolling Stones use their famous symbol like this, based on one of their famous albums, and it is it has become part and parcel of their identity. The spontaneous energy, the rock and roll, atmosphere that it creates. It's such a good complement to the group and what they represent. And there are other symbols as well that you can see around the world. Some commonly used peace symbols, for example, like the dove and the olive branch. It's a very famous symbol based on the biblical tale of Noah's Ark. You see, in Noah's Ark, he sent the dove out to look for dry land. So when the dove comes back with an olive branch, it shows there's dry land. So it's hope. So this is not just a symbol of peace, but it's hope. So when they use such a symbol, you can tell it's a strong representation. It's become an identity for hope and peace. And there were other peace symbols those days, but some of these symbols are actually movements and very popular movements, and they become statements. So they're not just representations of an ideology, but they're strong statements. Ideologies are very important those days because they represent people's desire to make improvements, to see change in society. So every civilization, people would grow out of certain routines, or would grow out of, will mature through a certain struggle. And the Pax Cultura, for example, it's a very famous symbol, and this symbol is about anti-violence. It's about anti-war, and they don't stand for any kind of um, war and violence. So this symbol was created by an artist and designer, 1874 to 1947. Basically, during that period of time, the Pax Cultura has a strong following. Um, this is also a very famous peace symbol, and again, an artist and a designer actually designed this because they seem to be very vocal in about things that they want to see happen, and so they've decided to create symbols like that has strong context and meaning behind it. So you notice that these symbols were created not just at random, not just for the purpose of creating, not just for the purpose of stamping it all over the place, but there is a statement, there is a purpose. So there is a strong contextual understanding behind it. Other examples, like the War Resisters League, notice the image of a broken rifle, again an anti-war symbol. And there were other symbols as well, symbols of secret societies. Secret societies are based on ideologies. They are based on some kind of new understanding, new way of thinking. So they decided to create groups and secret societies that stand for all the principles of this ideology. And if you notice that this one is the Freemason, and the, the Freemason themselves consist of so many emblems. Each emblems represent different levels of achievement. So you can do more research about Freemasonry on your own, but here we're going to look at visuals and how effective these visuals we use to communicate ideologies and ways of understanding. So these ideologies and understanding, they represent visions. They are basically, if you create some kind of society, you have a vision, you have some kind of goal, some kind of target. These visions have strong, these visions are the context in which why you create these representations. And even in Eastern countries, Southeast Asian countries, you have the Yin and Yang, and what they talk about. When you look at the Yin and Yang, you can see two dots and two fish-like figures that's overlapping each other, complementing each other. It's a really nice balance. It's a very interesting two-dimensional design image, and they talk about, of course, relationship. Yeah, you can interpret it in many different ways, but if you look at it carefully, it's actually a very strong ideology. And the Yin and Yang has been the basis of many people's beliefs for generations, and it's a very strong philosophy that people follow, particularly who don't really believe in an absolute right and wrong, but rather they believe in good and bad complementing each other. So it's about belief and it's about ways of understanding. And in fictional narratives, like in DC Comics, Batman, and if you notice the bat symbol, there was a very famous scene in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. You notice that Bruce Wayne was talking to Alfred, and he was talking about being able to do the dirty work, being able to do the things that the cops can't do, and things that you can't do as a normal person. So, but being able to achieve them as a particular symbol. And this symbol basically does not just fight crime, but it terrorizes the crime. It shows them that crime need to be afraid of it. So it shows that he can operate in the dark. Where when justice can't quite see in the dark, then that's where the bat comes in, because he's able to see in the dark. Ironic, isn't it? Bats do. They are pretty much blind during the day, but they can see very well in the dark. So that's a very strong contextual meaning behind this superhero symbol. Quite interesting. So that's the final slide for this particular lesson, and I hope that you understand this a little bit. But if you need to ask me some more questions, please do so, and I'll be able to answer it in class. Do drop me an email, and please do some more research on this and blog about it. You would have got your instructions during the first class about your blogging, so all the best to that, and I'll see you in the next class. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening.